or throwing a football, we've got gravity, momentum, inertia, and ground reaction force that impact this and that help load us up. We need to be able to first and foremost overcome all those forces three-dimensionally. To be able to propel an object, we have the concepts of real and relative motion. Real motion, that means what our bones are doing in relation to each other. Relative motion, the joint motion that we get three-dimensionally, forward and backwards, side to side, and rotationally, that must occur for us to have good movement. With that being said, is that the experts who have quote-unquote designed and put these schemes together for us have designed this system in which the area that is being moved, these quote-unquote, these little rotator cuffs, with these tiny little weights, do more for endurance to really stabilize those guys, are really acting to reinforce that specific segment to move and to be way overactive at the wrong time. And what I mean by that is that when we're unloading, I'm uncorking this dodgeball at you, I have this loadability from the toes and the heel all the way up through the hand. If everything in the body is moving at the same direction, the same speed at the same time, I get no motion and I get a crap ton of shearing and friction-like forces and compensatory mechanisms throughout the body. The body is designed in such a way that as I go to unload this dodgeball or come back to throw a football, that I have this unloading of this grapevine from the bottom up with this top-down loading, that as I begin to throw the ball, I continue to get these distal segments to further mobilize and to turn on these little proprioceptors in my tissue that are sensitive to stretch, compression, and tension. So with that said, I get with these chain reaction like biomechanics, multiple co-contractions throughout the system. What the heck are co-contractions? Well, they're functional synergies. What's that? We have these diagonal and lateral train track, meridian-like track, anatomy-like systems throughout the body, head to toe, that act to load and spiral and to wind up. That gives the body feedback in terms of where it is in relation to itself in space, to be sensitive to compression, tension, and stretching, which helps kind of further load things up. We then, from that, develop a lot of dynamic stability. So we get this mushing-like effect with our multi-joint compression and congruency, which is great hydration for the synovial joint fluid in the joints that mushes these protoglycans within the joint surfaces to push waste out and to act like a pump to suck good nutrients and hydration back on in. We get this screwdriver-like effect, and that if we get a good fit with a flathead or a Phillips screwdriver, we get this good mushing to provide good stability so that we don't strip the joint out, just like friction and kind of shearing. So we get this natural form of stability through the body biomechanically if we're enabled to do so. Think scapula, you've got 17 muscles that attach to that guy. We get multi-joint approximation. So this multiple joint, as I start to unload down throughout the bottom of the system, as I continue to load up top, kind of from the top down, as I start to uncoil and I get this other stuff to stretch. If you were to take a look at me right here, and you can see the wrinkles through my shirt and everything as I throw an object, even if I'm throwing some water balloons in the backyard, I need what we call this multi-joint, this toes to finger disassociation to give me good load, so that when it gets to my arm, when it gets to my shoulder, when it gets to my ulna and radius and hand, that this thing acts just like a whip. It is a response to what happens below, rather than being this early top-down response. Hey, I'm more stable, I'm stronger, I'm tougher than what I think I should be. It's like walking home from school, running across a pit bull behind a fence in a chihuahua. The exercises and what we've been told through protocol to do makes these rotator cuffs look, make them out to be these pit bulls. Instead, they're a little chihuahua. We need this multi-joint approximation again, which develops from the bottom on up, this mushing, this stabilization, but then all this great mobility further on up, and it goes and it creeps up the chain as I start to unload. we do need to properly seed the head of the humerus into the glenoid fossa. The head of the humerus is 4 times the size diameter-wise of the glenoid fossa. The labrum, we've done some episodes on the slap tear and the slap lesion. We've got this fibrocartilage ring that goes around the glenoid fossa that deepens the depth of this by twice its normal depth because this joint is so unstable. Again, biomechanically, 3-dimensionally, we create our own stability, our natural stability with proprioceptive feedback and mobility at the same time. If we have good scapulothoracic, thoracic spine, hip, and upper extremity mobility. What the thoracic spine does, the scapula is going to do. What the scapula does, the thoracic spine is going to do. And that's what the shoulder is going to do. What the hip and the thoracic spine together do is going to be a direct result in terms of what the shoulder is going to do. So we have these individuals which respect them for who they are and what they are. Tom House, I'm not quite sure. You know, he is a physical therapist by trade. I do respect the man, and Tom, I hope that you watch this video and dig into this stuff a little bit. I do respect the innovativeness that you've always had in doing things a little bit differently. I don't respect the fact that in terms of functional anatomy, over decades now, you have not questioned nor made things better. You haven't scratched your head and you haven't made the transition to this on-table, isolated, one-dimensional like activity into function itself, things that our ancestors have been involved in since their hunter and gathering days thousands and thousands of years ago. This is no new concept at all, but when we develop athletes and when we develop people that move in one plane of motion, and when our focus is on one joint rather than multiple joints, and when our sole function is to improve internal rotation, which is therefore going to strengthen the subscapularis. Let me tell you a little bit about this. So with the function of the joint capsule itself, we get this mushing, we get this seeding of the humeral head into the glenoid fossa. In order for something to be able to move, cause and control. Cause meaning what eventually happens, and control means what does that tissue assist with and what buddies to decelerate, to control, and then to stabilize. And so subscapularis actually decelerates external rotation. The supraspinatus actually decelerates adduction and decelerates internal rotation. The infraspinatus and the teres minor actually decelerate internal rotation, and they have a great deal to do, all 4 of these guys, in the tilting of the scapula forward and backwards, of the slide and the glide up and down, in the medial and the lateral glide from the spine and out and from out to in, for this anterior and posterior tilt, for this upward and downward rotation, and for this internal and external rotation. We see that the head of the humerus has to be stabilized well, but that we also need a crap ton of mobility there. And if we ratchet this thing down with a lot of isolated techniques, we're not going to be able to withstand rotator cuff tendinopathies, tendonitis to an osis, whether it's reactive, disrepair to a degeneration, to your famous, hey, 6,000 to 10,000 things could have caused a shoulder impingement, which we'll get to. Heaven forbid we do anything overhead, which we're supposed to do anyways. Bicipital tendinopathies, labral tears leading to Tommy John surgeries on the collateral, pathologies, as well as flexor and extensor common mass related injuries. That's the little guy Maverick right there. Maverick, you want to come up here and throw a little ball? Maverick just woke up from a nap, and I would have to believe that even though the AC is on and he can hear, and he's inside, he can hear what's going on about the old rotator cuff right now. And Maverick knows a lot more than Tom House. Maverick knows a lot more about function, even though he's only 2.5 or 2, than Dr. Job and Dr. Yoakum did with regards to rehabilitation protocols and functional movement. We need to question things. We need to look at things a little bit differently, because what we have been doing is not working. This is the first episode of the Rotator Huff, Rotator Cuff, and Rotator little Thuff. So the hybrid of what the hip, thoracic spine, scapulothoracic joints play in the function and role of shoulder function and rotator cuff function. In the preceding episodes, we're going to take a look at some of the strategies, some of the exercises that we're going to go after to improve rotator cuff function, because guys, we've missed the boat. We really have. This stuff shouldn't be happening. We should be able to be free to explore for several years down the road without sustaining the chronic pain, the chronic inflammation that we have for the activities that we love.